On this episode of Smoke Signals, I interviewed the winner of the Scruffy Smoke Challenge, and smoke guru Ken LaRue shares his editing tips and tricks. This week on Smoke Signals, we talked to the winner of the first Scruffy Smoke Challenge, who's in Cairo, Egypt.
Hello, Mark.
First of all, I want to congratulate you on winning the first Scruffy Smoke Challenge.
Thanks. That's my honor.
So tell me, how did you discover the challenge yourself?
During surfing the internet, that's all.
Yeah?
When I figured out the workflow of Smoke and Autodesk at all, I did a lot of search. I was very excited about it. So I figured out how to dig in the internet to find some tutorials or books or anything talking about Autodesk Smoke.
So how long have you been working with Smoke 2013?
About 6 months.
And before that, did you have prior experience with Smoke?
I installed 2012 for 1 month, but it was a bit slow on my machine.
Okay. So how do you like the difference between 2012, for example, and 2013?
Oh, it's wide difference. It's so far difference. The UI, the connect effects, it's amazing. It's amazing thing I have ever seen. Even in another node-based compositing softwares like Nuke, but the node-based compositing of Smoke, the connect effects, it's very powerful.
I'm happy to hear that. So
Yeah.
did you watch Ken LaRue's tutorial on the modular keyer in order to be able to produce the challenge result?
Yeah, of course, it helped me a lot, of course.
I am the outlier. This is my tipping point. This is what the dog saw.
The modular killer is a very powerful tool to... I face a lot of the challenge in my work, but Smoke makes it like, boof, in a minute. I can do it in a minute. In a minute, I can get good key.
So what's your regular workflow? What do you usually use to do your compositing work?
As I told you, in the TV series I worked on, it was Egyptian TV series. My company, Egyptian Arts Group, that produced it. We face a lot of a challenge in the car chroma key. A lot of reflections on the glass and the body of the car. We tried After Effects and some softwares. It's middle-level plugins,
Yeah.
When I first see Smoke, I saw someone in a post-production company work with Smoke 2010, I think. I saw the interface and I said, "Whoa, what all that interface? Is that a plain dashboard,
A plain dashboard. Yeah.
It's very big, it's very complicated. But I knew I will learn that because when I put something in my mind, I can do it. So it was very interesting to go learning this wonderful software. Especially, I want to say the name of Grant K. You must know him.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure Grant will be happy to know that you've been watching his tutorials and moving forward with Smoke.
He helped me the most. The most.
Tell me a little bit about the series you're working on. I saw that you also produced the opening graphic logo for it.
Yeah. It was a wonderful experience for me.
أنا متأكد وعلى يقين إنك مخبي بلاوي.
ايه اللي خلاك ترجع مصر دلوقتي يا مصر؟ محفوظ النبال يا باشا تعدى كل الخطوط الحمراء.
I started working on this as a web developer, as a social media campaigns and something like that. And some circumstances put me in the position of visual effects coordinator. Okay, I told them I can do something simple. I can do simple keys, simple compositing explosions, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all destiny for me. It was not meant to be, but I did it. So we have a lot, much, very much chroma key scenes. You know,
Yeah.
it was very heavy. It was very hard work to do that, and also some scenes finished in the day of delivery. You know, the also the fast workflow of Smoke. It renders faster than any software. It saved our lives.
Well, tell me a little bit about the workflow. This series that you're working on. What kind of cameras do they use to shoot it?
It was Red One.
A red one, and
Red
then
One.
it's the show is edited in Final Cut Pro or Media Composer. Or?
Final Cut Pro, then goes to the visual effects, Smoke or After Effects or anything, and then the DaVinci Resolve to deliver it.
Okay, so you do the color timing in Resolve. So you use Smoke for doing some of the effects and some of the conform. Do you conform the show in Smoke also, or is
Yeah,
it
yeah, of course.
okay? Okay,
It's
good.
very powerful conform tool, yeah.
Obviously, I'm looking forward to see more of the stuff that you'll be doing with Smoke. I hope you'll post some of that online and keep us posted. And
of course.
I'll definitely point people to go and see the work that you're doing on the series on the following links. So thanks a lot for taking the time to talk to me, and congratulations again. And hope to see you soon and see your work pretty soon.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks a lot, Ahmed.
If you've been following the progress of Smoke 2013 over the year, you've probably seen one or several videos featuring Ken LaRue, Smoke Technical Marketing Manager, who dazzles audiences with his editing and compositing chops. Ken has a great blog on the area called Blend and Comp, which hosts tips and tricks and video content that helps you learn and master Smoke 2013. We decided to include his series on dynamic editing in this episode to make it easier for you to download and watch offline. Take it away, Ken.
Hi everyone, this is Ken LaRue from Autodesk, and I am the Smoke Technical Marketing Manager. And I want to make a video here focusing on some of the essential hotkeys I think you need to know when you're doing your rough edits and your creative editorial work inside of Smoke. Just for reference, I will be using the Smoke 2013 hotkeys. And with that said, if you're coming from Final Cut Pro, if you're coming from Media Composer, a lot of these hotkeys are probably going to be very familiar to you, and you might already know a lot of them. But my thought behind making this video is that I bet there's some that you don't know. And also, I want to touch on workflow when you are doing your rough cut editing and your creative editorial work. There may be some differences from those other applications that you aren't familiar with, and really my goal here is to try to help you be as efficient as you can inside the software. First off, I want to explain the footage that I'm using is actually shot by myself on a recent vacation I took when I went to Europe with my wife. We had a wonderful time. Thank you very much. We visited several different countries and cities, and one of them being Paris. So I'm going to be using the footage that I shot when I was in Paris. Now the audio, or I should say the music that I'm going to be using, is actually courtesy from a company named Premium Beat. So I want to first of all thank Premium Beat very much for allowing me to use the music inside of my tutorial, my video here. But let me jump to their website really quick because I want to show you something. So here's the Premium Beat website, premiumbeat.com obviously. And as I said, it's a great resource for royalty-free music and different sound effects, but it goes further than that because it has a whole section of blogs and great information about the industry in video editing and so on. And obviously if you're watching this video, you are using Smoke or learning Smoke. And if you don't know who Brian Mulligan is, I'm going to introduce you to his blog because premiumbeat.com is where his blog is posted. Now, Brian is honestly one of the most knowledgeable Smoke users that I know of, and he's very generous with that knowledge, and that's the whole point of what I'm trying to get to. If I go over to where you see blog here, and I go to the blogs, you'll see there's a series of different blogs available from different authors focusing on different pieces of software. And as I said, Brian focuses on Smoke. And right here, you'll see recently Brian posted a blog focusing on the degrain and denoise tools inside of Connect Effects. If you want to see all of Brian's posts, just click on his name right here where it reads author, and you'll go to Brian's blog page. And as I scroll down here, this is what I'm talking about. Here Brian has posted blogs on individual tools and workflows that are inside of Smoke. And like I said, he's a very knowledgeable and very sharing person with that knowledge. So Premium Beat, again, great for royalty-free music, great for sound effects, but also Brian's blog could be really helpful to you. So I highly recommend you visiting this and checking it out. Okay, back over to Smoke. So as I said, I really want to focus on the hotkeys and the shortcuts for doing dynamic editing, dynamic trimming, inserting, overriding, all the basic stuff you do every day. Now, of course, we could go up to our menu for Autodesk Smoke, and you see here's our keyboard shortcut, Option H. Here's the first hotkey that I'm teaching you. Option H will bring up the keyboard shortcuts, but I'm going to bring this up, and you'll see in here we have all the hotkeys that are available to you, all the shortcuts that are available to you, and you can search for things like if I wanted to find edit, I choose edit and hit enter. You'll see that it's going to now start finding any entry or any description with the word edit or editor and so on. And I can use these arrows and I can go down. And here's a perfect example. We're going to look at the insert. We're going to look at override edits. We're going to look at the align edit and so on. Here's where the hotkeys are available to you. Well, instead of you going through here to learn each one of these hotkeys, that's the point of my video. But I do recommend you familiarizing yourself with this editor because we can even create hotkeys or customize hotkeys and so on, and we'll take a look at that a little bit later. For right now, we're just going to start with our default Smoke 2013 hotkeys and go from there, okay? Also, one more thing I should mention, the hotkeys are also available to you in the wiki page. So if I go to the help menu up here, you'll see it says Smoke Help. If I click that, my browser is going to reopen, and we're going to go to our wiki help page for Smoke 2013. And right here on the default page, you'll see it reads Keyboard Shortcuts. If I click on that, I'm going to go to a page where once again, I can see a list of all the different hotkeys that are available to me that are in Smoke. And here again are the editing ones. These are the ones I'm going to focus on today. Of course, we're going to look at other ones such as navigation, setting your in and outs and so on. But I'm just trying to show you the different resources you have to back up your knowledge with what I'm going to show you today. In fact, what I did when I was learning these keyframes or any program, I like to have a printed copy of this near my desk, near my computer, so that I can refer to them very often as I'm working. Because if you don't use the hotkeys over and over again, you're not going to remember them, okay? So enough with the different resources that you have available to you. Let's focus on what I want to show you right now. So I'm starting out with a rough cut already started. You can see I have a sequence down here. And we already know the UI of Smoke. I'm believing that you already know the UI. We have our library, our media library over here on our left-hand side. And you can see that I have several different folders. I've already imported all of my footage and I've organized it to different areas of the city that I visited. And I'm going to access these folders as we continue to work on this. I have my source sequence layout. Remember, if we tap to the side here, I can go over here and change what I'm looking at. My view, I'm looking at source and sequence. So obviously whatever folder I select or image I select over here inside of my media library, the source is going to be displayed here inside the left-hand player. Over here on the right side, I have the sequence, and if I scrub my sequence down here, or if I hit my play button, we start to play back the sequence. All right, I'll go back to my first frame using some of these buttons, which we're going to look at in just a second. But down below, we have our sequence area, our source and sequence tabs, if you will. And right now, because I only have one sequence open, I have one sequence tab and I have one source tab. And you'll notice the tab with the red highlight, that's your sequence. You'll notice the green tab, that's going to be your source. And obviously, as I change or select a different source inside of my folder here, it's going to change what is being played or displayed in the back tab. To bring the tab forward, of course, I click on it. I now bring that source forward. And you can see that the green has gotten brighter. The sequence tab has gone in the back. If I click back on my sequence, it now becomes active. Now, notice another thing that is happening. When I switch between these two tabs, the view above is becoming highlighted, indicating that that is the currently focused viewer or tab. Now, if I go back to here, my sequence, you'll see that is now highlighted. I bring this up because I'm going to introduce you to a hotkey to toggle between these. And the other thing that's important to understand is that when I use these hotkeys, there's going to be a different result depending upon what part of the UI is focused. What I mean by that is you can focus one of the three sections we just looked at. We've got our media library, that can be focused. We also have our viewers. I click on it. It's now focused. You'll notice that the color changed to a lighter gray. It's very subtle, but it just gets a little bit lighter. You'll also notice that the highlight around the viewer got a little brighter because the viewers are now focused. But if I bring my cursor down to the sequence area and I tap on it, you'll notice that its gray got a little bit lighter, and you'll also notice that the highlight got a little lighter, indicating that that is not focused, even though the viewer for that is focused. The area, my tab area down here below, now became focused. Now here's the hotkey. If you want to access the tab for your source, it is F6. Now you'll see what happened when I hit F6. The source tab became front. It came to the front, and the sequence obviously went back. And of course, our source view is still focused. If I hit F7, you'll see the sequence tab comes to the front, and also notice that the focus of the sequence player, the viewer, just became selected and highlighted. So that's what happened when I had my tab area focused in the UI, okay? Let me select over here in our media library just to focus the media library. Notice that the sequence tab is forward, the sequence viewer is focused, but I hit F6, the tabs don't change. The viewer does. So the focus now switched over to my source viewer, you can see because the highlight, but my tabs did not change down here. The sequence tab is still in front. If I hit F7, of course, we switch over to this viewer, nothing changes down here. F6 one more time. Again, the view changes over to here, but the tabs do not change. And that is also true. Let me click over here on my viewer to access this one when the viewers are the focus part of the UI. I hit F6. You'll see the focus jumped over to the source, F7, jumps back to the sequence, but again, the tabs don't change. I bring this up because a little later when we're doing our creative editorial work and we're using nothing but hotkeys, it's important to make sure we know which is focused, because the playback controls using your hotkeys, JKL and the spacebar and so on, which we're going to look at in a second, will affect whatever viewer is focused on. I really want to focus on hotkeys for doing everything. But to really understand the hotkeys, we have to understand what the hotkeys are for. And as you saw just a second ago, I hit the play button here to play back the sequence. Pretty straightforward, I know. Standard playback controls we have under each one of these players. One for the sequence and one for the source. We have a play button, we've got go to next frame or previous frame, we have go to next transition button, and we also have a couple of buttons on the outside to navigate to different sections of our footage, our sequence, or our source. And that's really what I want to focus on very quickly here. You'll notice that there's this little dark triangle on the bottom of 3 of the buttons. Now if I click on this and hold it, you'll see it actually opens up a flyout with different options for how I want to play back my sequence or my source. Whether you want to play through the in and out, your start to out, do you want it to loop, and so on. Also, as I mentioned, these 2 outside buttons have the same little triangle. So if I click on that, now you're going to see I've got a whole bunch of different options as to how I want to navigate or jump to different sections of my sequence or my source. Whether it's the in mark, start clip, cue marks, keyframes, and so on. Also notice that you get a list of the different hotkeys that are available for each one that actually has a hotkey designated for it already. But my point of this is, let's say I want to switch this button to be the go to cue mark. So I choose that out of my list. You'll notice that the little icon next to the arrow just changed, but also notice that it changed over here too. These are linked together. When you change one of them, the other one will also change. Also, look over at my source view. It also now has changed to match the go to cue mark button. And you can change it very easily by just clicking on the button, holding it, and then you'll notice the action that I've chosen is the one that is aligned with the button. What I mean by that, if I go back to in mark, we now switch everything back to going to the in and out marks. And if I click the button once again and hold it, you'll see that the in mark is lined up. So we're going to be taking a look at all these different hotkeys a little later when we start creating keyframes and setting markers and so on. So right now, I really just wanted to point that out to you. The other thing, of course, is whenever you go to any one of the menus up here, next to any action or task that you have, you're going to see the hotkeys that are listed for them independently also. Okay, so again, just different resources to try to remember the hotkeys that we're going to be covering and learning here right now. And then each player also has a scrub bar that you can scrub and drag around here. So independently, I can scrub my source or I can scrub my sequence. And of course, you'll notice down here in the sequence tab area, the current frame or the positioner is also going to move with the scrubbing because they're linked together. Oh, here's another hotkey. If you ever need to scrub both your source and sequence at the same time, you can do it by holding my Control and my Shift key and going to my tab area. And if I scrub, you'll notice that I can scrub both the source and the sequence view. This can be very handy at times when you're trying to sync up or line up or figure out what in and outs or what frames you want to use from your source into your sequence. If I click on my source tab, now I'm accessing the source itself, and I hold Control-Shift again. I can scrub through, and I can be looking at my sequence and my source at the same time to figure out exactly maybe what in and outs I want and so on. Definitely can be a very handy hotkey. Let me bring the Sequence tab back forward. Okay, so forget the buttons, right? Let's talk about our hotkeys. As I mentioned, Smoke 2013 has the JKL workflow that you're probably already familiar with from other applications, but I've got to go over it just in case someone isn't familiar with it, okay? So JKL. L is going to play your clip forward. Let me make sure my sequence is focused. I hit L. Sequence plays forward. Hit K. I stop the playback. I hit J. We play backwards. Again, hit the K key to stop the playback. And then, of course, if you repeatedly start to hit the L or the J, forward or backwards, you're going to increase the speed increment as to how fast it's playing back. So, example, I'll hit L once. I'll hit L again. You notice right over here, it says ×2. Hit L again, ×3. L again, ×4. Hit K to stop it. Same thing for J. Hit J once, J twice, J 3 times. I think you get the idea. I'll hit the K key to stop. So JKL will allow you to play forward, backward, stop, and speed up the increment of your playback. Now, if I want to navigate frame by frame using my JKL, what you can do is hold down the K key and then start hitting the L or the J, depending upon which direction you want to go, backwards or forwards. So I'll hold down the K key, and then I'll tap on the L key. I start to increase my increment one frame at a time. You can also hold both down, and you'll scrub through. So watch this. K being held down, I hold my L. And obviously going backwards, I hit J. And then I'm going to hold down the J and the K at the same time. And one thing I wanted you to notice, though, while I was doing that, while I was scrubbing with my JKL, I was hearing the audio. I was scrubbing the audio. I can also navigate to different frames by using my left and right arrow keys. But you're not going to hear the audio. So watch what happens. I'm going to just start hitting my right arrow key. And I obviously start to advance frame by frame by frame. I can hit my left arrow key, frame by frame by frame. And if I want to jump 10 frames forward or backwards, I can hold the shift key and then hit the right arrow key. You'll notice here inside of our time indicator, I'm at the 16-second 28th frame. I hold shift, right arrow key, and so on. And then backwards, the left arrow key. So this allows me to navigate 10 frames forward or backwards. If there's a specific amount of frames or a specific frame number you want to jump to, you can also do that pretty easily. I'll click right in my time indicator and a calculator will appear. Now there's a couple of things I want to talk about really quickly here. I'm looking at time code. First of all, if you wanted to work in frames all the time, you can change that inside your preferences. Within the calculator here, if I wanted to switch this to look at frames, I just click where it reads TC for time code, and now I'm looking at frames. I click on it again where it now reads FRM, and we're now looking at time code. You can also control if you're looking at non-drop frames and drop frames. But the add and subtract button, these are the buttons you're going to use to navigate forward or backwards by specific amounts of frames. So if I come in here and I enter 22 and I click add, you'll notice that my cursor jumped 22 frames forward. If I click subtract, it's going to jump back 22 frames. And you can repeatedly do this by just clicking the button over and over again. Now if I wanted to go to a specific frame, let's see, we're at 1402. So if I want to go to the 18-second mark, I can click 18, and then here's a trick for you. Instead of clicking 00, whenever you want to add just 00 for any field, whether it's hours, minutes, seconds, or frames, just click the period button and it'll automatically enter or add the zeros. And then I click enter, and you're going to notice down inside the cursor, and also here, I jump to the 18-second mark. All of these methods of getting to a certain point in time in your sequence become very important when we start to do our dynamic editing later. I should also mention that the spacebar can be used to play your footage forwards or backwards also. If I hit the spacebar, we start playing forward. Hit the spacebar, I stop. You want to go backwards, play backwards, hold shift and spacebar. And once again, spacebar to stop. And one last hotkey I should introduce about quickly navigating without markers, without any in and outs or anything, is your up and down arrows. They're going to take you to each individual transition or cut point inside of your timeline, in your sequence. So the up arrow key is going to take me to the previous transition point, and my down arrow key takes me to the next. And I can navigate very quickly between each transition by using my up and my down arrow keys. All right, let's take a look at some of these other navigation hotkeys that I mentioned that we see here under each player, such as go to cue mark, go to keyframing, go to in and outs, and so on. So I need to create a couple of these. Obviously, we can use these buttons right here to set your in and outs. Click, I just set my in. I can move forward in my sequence, and then click the out button to activate my out. Now, who in the world would do that when you can use I and O? Obviously, we always use I and O as our fast way of creating our in and outs. So for example, if I want to go to another frame here and I hit the O key on the keyboard, that's where I set my out. If I move over here and I hit I set my in. That's the most common way of setting your in and outs, right? Is your I and your O. Then these parameters underneath here, they can let you alter and change them if you need to. You can click in it to get a calculator. You can scrub these different areas in here, whether it's the in point, the out point, or the duration. Okay, so now I've got some in and out set here. So let's talk about how I navigate my position or my current frame indicator to my in and my outs. If I hold Shift and hit I, it's going to go to the in point. So once again, Shift I goes to the in point. Shift O goes to your out point. Shift I in point, Shift O out point. If you want to remove your in or your out, you can easily do that with hotkeys also. I should just point out, if I go over to the gear right here, and I click on this, I go to mark, you're going to see all the different options that I'm showing you. We can set our in, set our outs this way. We can set our in and outs based on a selection. I'll show you that in a second. It's the X key. And then we can also clear our in and out respectively, or clear both by using Option I to get rid of our in, Option O to get rid of our out, and Option X to get rid of the in and the out at one time. So let me discard that. So what did I say? Option I, goodbye in point. Option O, goodbye out point. Let me undo that twice. So it's back. Option X gets rid of both of them. While I was editing the video, I realized at this point I forgot to show the hotkey to create in and outs based on selected clips in your timeline. So I stopped editing and I'm recapturing this very quickly just to show you that. It's pretty simple, but obviously it's important when you want to create in and outs based on a series of frames that you selected or different clips and so on. I'm just going to do it with a couple segments right here really quick. So I can hold the Shift key and I can just select these three segments here. So I want to create my in and outs based on this selection. It's the X key. I hit the X key. You'll see the in and outs are now set based on the selected clips. In just a minute, we'll be looking at all the selection hotkeys to select your different segments and individual frames and so on. But just remember, to create your in and outs based on a selection, it's the X key. Now, back to your regularly scheduled program. Now let's add a couple markers. Once again, I just want to show you where they're available to be created through menus. If you want, you can create it from up here in the mark menu. You can come here from the gear where you see all the mark options. And of course, I can come down to my gear here. And you can see I got all my mark options in here also. But we're going to use hotkeys. So to create a mark, we hit M. I create a marker. You can create those obviously even while you're playing. So if I hit the L key, I'm playing. Maybe you're lining this up to music. I hit the M key again. I create another marker. I can scrub forward. Let's stop this playback. I'll move forward and hit the M key again. So now I have 3 different markers. And obviously you can customize each marker if you want to. I can come over here where you see the little blue swatch. I click on it. I can switch my option in my color picker to be looking at the pots. So now I can easily say this one's going to be yellow. We'll set that one yellow. I can name them. So this one's going to be Ken. Then I can select this marker and I can change this one to a green. Say okay, and we'll change this one to edit, whatever, right? And of course, if I want to navigate to the different markers, I could go to my gear. I could go to. I can go to mark, and you see a flyout, which each one of them with the name and the color that I created. I would never do that. That's way too much work for me, especially when I can hold my Shift key and hit my down arrow key, and that takes me to my next marker. Do it again, I jump to the yellow marker. And then if I want to go to the previous marker, hold Shift and hit the up arrow key. and I navigate to the different markers. Just for a point of reference, I have 3 markers in here. If I hold the shift and I continuously hit either up or down arrow key, I will cycle through my markers. So what I mean is, I don't have any markers prior to the current marker we are locked on or sitting on. If I hold shift and hit the up arrow key, which is the shortcut for going to the previous marker, I'm going to jump to the last marker. So even though I did jump forward, notice that I skipped the green one because we really went around the sequence to come back to the one. So you can toggle and cycle through the markers is all I'm trying to say. Okay, I'm going to delete these markers for right now. So let's go over to our gear menu. I go to my marks and I'll choose delete all markers, and they are all gone. Okay, the next navigation hotkey I want to talk about is when you have keyframes. I'm going to zoom in, and I'll talk about all the zooming hotkeys in a second, but I hope you already know that when you bring your cursor down here over the horizontal scroll bar, if you click and drag anywhere on this bar, up and down, you'll zoom into the positioner's location, the clip that's right at the positioner. As I said, I'll come back and we'll talk about all the different zooming and panning hotkeys in just a second. But this clip that I have right here, let's add an axis to this. So I go to my FX, I come over here, I choose an axis tool, I add my axis tool. I'm going to hit my up arrow key to go to the first frame, the end point, the transition of this clip. I'll activate auto key, and let's zoom in on this a little bit. So I just drag my X up. I want to jump forward 25 frames, so I'll click in my current time indicator, add 25, and choose add. We jump in there, and then I'll close the calculator. Now I'm going to take my scale, I'll drag it down like so. Not that far, let's go about right here. And I'll scale it up once again, and I'll maybe adjust my X or my Y, whatever. I'm just trying to create keyframes. We can see inside this clip now, if I move my cursor a little bit, we have 3 keyframes. We have one at the first frame, we have one at this frame here, and we have one at that frame. They're indicating by these light blue lines that you see there. If I want to navigate to those different keyframes now, I'll hold Shift K, and that will take me to the next keyframe. So once again, Shift K takes me to the forward keyframe. Option K takes me to the previous keyframe that I have. And just like using the hotkey to navigate between my markers, I can continuously hit the same hotkey, and I will cycle through the keyframes as far as my navigation. Option K, Option K, Option K, Shift K, Shift K, Shift K. All right, I'm going to delete this axis. You can do it in many different ways. You have the delete button. You can pick it up and drag it to the bottom of the UI to throw it away, or you can hold the Alt key and click on a tool, and that will also delete it. That's the most common hotkey that I like using. So once again, Alt, click on a tool, and goodbye. Now, one more critical part of understanding when we're doing our inserts, our overrides, and just using hotkeys and so on, or anything you're actually applying inside the sequence area, is the focus point, the primary layer. Right now, we know I have one audio track, I have one video track. If I want to add more video or audio tracks, I can do it again in many different ways. If I right-click in this little empty area above my layer, where I have no layer, I get the contextual menu, and I get the new option, and you can see video track. Just for reference, the hotkey is Command L and the plus key on your number pad, not the plus key above your letters. The plus key on the number pad will give you a new video track. You can go to the gear menus to do this. You can go to the drop-down menus to do this, but here I'm just doing it. I right-click, I choose new, I choose video track, and boom, I have a new video track. Notice what happened automatically was this little yellow line, this cross yellow line here, which is our focus point, moved up to the new layer that I just created. I can manually grab it and drag it down and put it now on this layer. So now you'll notice where it's P for primary, it's going to follow this as I move this around. Now, instead of manually moving that up and down with my cursor, if I use the page up key, that takes it up. I can navigate through my different layers, including my audio. Watch what happens if I hit page up again. It's actually going to go down to my audio tracks. So just like the markers and the keyframes I showed you, we can toggle through page up, page up, page up, and page down is going to navigate downwards. So page down, page up, page up, page up. So it's always important to understand where this is at before you start to do your inserts, your overrides, or even a lot of your cuts and your dynamic editing that we're going to be looking at. This is going to determine what is actually happening, such as making a cut. If I create a cut using a hotkey of Control V, which is what our hotkey is to make a cut, Control V creates the cut in the timeline, it will create the cut in what's called a gap right here. Notice that when I select this area of the layer that has nothing, it actually does have something. It has what's called a gap. And we'll look at this a little deeper later, but understand that this is an actual object, if you will, inside my timeline. If I hold Control and I hit the V key, you're going to look and say, wait, what happened? Did you kill something? No. What I did is I actually created a cut in the gap. Look at when I select this, you'll see that these are two separate objects now. So that's how you create your cut. But notice that the cut happened on the layer with the gap effect because my focus point was there. Let me undo that really quickly. So now there is no cut, okay? If I want to cut through everything, all of my layers at one time, I hold Control-Shift-V, and now you'll notice the gap got cut, this guy got cut, and so did my audio got cut. If there's a layer you do not want to be affected by a cut action such as that, Control-Shift-V, you lock it. You can lock your audio, you can lock your video tracks over here in the patch panel where you have the little lock button. That's going to lock it, and if I turn it on once again, you'll notice you see the striped lines telling you or indicating this is locked. Then that layer or that audio, video, whatever, would not be affected by the action that I just did. Let me undo that. I want to get rid of all those cuts, okay? And before we start to do our inserts or overrides, there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is navigating through multiple layers using your up and down arrow key, which I just discussed a second ago. But let's do this. Let's create a couple copies of clips and just put some clips on this top layer. So I select this clip down here, Command C, and now because my focus point is on the top layer, I hit Command V, and it's going to paste that clip onto that layer. Okay, let me zoom back a little bit, move over, let's take this thing, do the same thing. Command C, I'll copy that, I'll go over here. Now I can right click and I can choose paste. I'll paste that clip in there. So now you'll see what we have is we've got a couple clips on the top layer, including a gap because obviously there's space in between those two. But if I want to deselect this, I'm just going to click up here. Again, we'll come back looking at all the selection, deselection hotkeys in a second. But I don't want anything selected for right now. My point of this is if I want to start navigating to the transitions, the cut points of these different clips, as I said, we can use our up and down arrow key. But that focus point, that cross yellow bar, is going to control what transitions and what layer I'm going to go to using the arrow key. So for example, I hit the up arrow key, I go to the previous transition for this layer. I hit the down arrow key, we navigate, as I said, to these different transitions. I hit it again, I go all the way to the end of my sequence, determined by my audio. You can always use your home and your end to jump back and forth between the very beginning and the end of your sequence. But now watch what happens if I hold the Control key and I start to hit my up arrow key. I navigate to the cut, but on the bottom layer. So when you're holding your Control key, this option of using your up and down arrow key to get to different transitions, different cut points, will take into consideration any cuts, any transitions on all the different layers. So once again, not holding Control, I'm going to navigate to the transition point based on the individual layer that the focus point is on. Holding Control, up and down arrow, I'm going to go to the transition points for any layer that you have. Let me delete these extra clips I put on this top layer so you can take your clip and just drag it down to the bottom of the UI and you can throw it away that way. You can also use your delete key and so on. There's many ways of doing the same action of deleting. So now we want to start creating our edits. I want to continue building my rough cut. I'll use my page down key to put my focus back on the proper layer, and I'll use my down arrow key to navigate to where I want to start to do my inserts and my overrides and so on. You probably already know that we have these buttons right here for doing our tasks of insert, the yellow button, our override, which is the red, and we have the blue for replace. Then also there's a flyout where you have other editorial tasks such as fit to fill, replace media, append, and so on. And of course I have to show that we can go to the clip menu and there you have all the same actions, okay? Again, I want to use hotkeys. That's what I want to use. So hotkey right away, insert is F9. Override, F10. Replace, F11. And if you go back to the clip menu, you can see that replace media is Control F11, ripple replace, Option F11, fit to fill is Shift F11. And then append is F12 and prepend is Shift F12. So what's our typical workflow for creating our rough cut? We come into our source, we select the source. So I've got this clip here. I'm looking at a bunch of the files that I shot when I visited Montmartre. I'm sure I'm butchering the name of that beautiful place, but you can see I've got these files. Oh, another hotkey I should show you is you want to navigate through your different clips in an individual folder without having to click on them. You can use your bracket keys, your left and right bracket keys. As I start to use my right bracket key, I start to climb or navigate down. If I hit the left bracket key, I start to navigate up through the different clips that are inside this individual folder. And then, of course, as we mentioned, we've got all of our buttons right here. Who wants to use buttons? I'm using hotkeys, right? I hit the L key, I start my playback. I hit the I for my in. I hit the O for my out. I hit the K to stop. I hit F9. I want to insert this, and now it's brought in. Look at this. Good thing. I'm glad this happened because I can talk about this. Let me zoom in a little bit. So what I just did was, well, if I play it back, you'll hear it. Nice music playing. Bunch of street sounds. Obviously, I didn't want the audio to be part of that insert. So let me undo this. So there's a couple things we can do. Remember, you have access to each one of these source clips on its own tab. If I go to that tab back there, or I could hit F6 with my tab area activated, there's the audio file. If I wanted to, I can come in here and just delete the audio. Then obviously when I insert it into my timeline, there would be no audio, so it wouldn't override it. I should make a reference. Holding the / key and clicking on any clip is going to give you all the information of what that clip is. These are all QuickTime files that I'm working with right here. In fact, I love the fact I can hold that hotkey of the / key and go over any clip. And this is also true inside of your sequence. If I go to the sequence and I hold the hotkey of / key and click down, you can see I can get the information of each clip. All right, I'm getting off track. Sorry. So I don't want to delete the audio. What I want to do is lock the audio tab so when I do my insert, it doesn't bring in the audio. So again, here's the little lock icon. I can just click on that and I can lock it. Now I hit F9 and you see what happened. The clip is inserted the way I wanted to, but the audio is not affected because it was locked. Now here's a hotkey I don't know. I would love to know the hotkey to lock and unlock my audio track. So let's do this. I'll hold the Option key and hit the H key. And I'll go to the hotkey editor. Let me enter lock and choose search. Okay, that's not what I want. Audio scrub, go down, lock. Lock selected clip, lock under cursor, lock, oh, here we go, video, audio. Okay, well, they don't have hotkeys. Okay, well, that's okay because this is what's great is we can create our own. So the unlock the video and audio tracks does not have a hotkey. I'll select audio 1, that's what I've got right here, my audio 1 track, and I want to add a hotkey. So let's add Option Command A, and then I click Set. Okay, good. There's no conflict. Now, had there been a conflict, it would have been highlighted in red and would be telling you that, yeah, that's being used by something else. Figure something out. But there was none. So Alt Command or Option Command A will now be my hotkey to lock and unlock audio track number 1. You'll see it says user right here. This list is just telling you that it was created by me, the user. I'll click Close. So now if I hold Option Command A, there you go. I can toggle my audio track being locked and unlocked. I'm going to leave it locked for right now while I continue to create my rough cut. All right, so I'm done with this clip. Let's go to the next clip. I'll hit the L key. We'll start our playback. Look for a frame that I like. I'll hit my I. No, I'll hit the I there. I changed my mind. I'll hit the O, hit the K, hit F9. Let's select the next clip. Again, L, I, O, K. So this is a good example. This clip, I know for a fact, if we scrub through this, you can see I've got a bunch of different things I've shot with one camera shot, okay? And I want to create multiple segments from this one clip. So I can obviously set my in and outs here, move forward, set new in and out, insert it into the timeline, and then start the playback again and find my new in and outs that I want, set those, stop the playback, insert, move forward again, find more in and outs, more frames I want, and insert that. But I want to show you a tip or a workflow for doing exactly that in a very efficient way. So I've got my in and outs for my first clip that I like already. And obviously because I was just working on this source file, this source viewer is highlighted, right? Well, I'm going to hit F9, which inserts it as I want it to be. But look what just happened. Because I inserted the clip into my sequence, the sequence is now what is highlighted. And I'm thinking, okay, well, let's continue looking at this source file. So I hit the L key. Oh, Well, what's happening, because the sequence was highlighted, you stop the playback, hit K, it's what started playing back. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted my source to continue playing. Let me first hit my up arrow key to go back to my transition. Now, of course, I could hit F6, or I could have clicked in the view to reactivate it or refocus it, if you will. Well, here's my tip that I'm going to show you. Whatever player or viewer your cursor is over, JKL will affect that even if the other player or viewer is the focused player. So for example, let's do this again. Yes, I've now just clicked in here. I hit F6 or whatever I needed. I now have focused this player. Let's hit the L key again. Actually, for time constraints, I'm going to scrub forward. There's a shot right here. Okay, just where it starts to pull back. I want to take this. I hit I hit L. Camera pulls back. I hit O. Okay, I set my in. I stop my playback. I hit F9 to insert, and just like I said before, what happened? The sequence is now the focus point, but my cursor's over source layer, right? I'm not going to tap on it. I'm not going to hit F6. I'm going to hit the L key. Automatically, Smoke knows that is the player you want to actually play him back because your cursor is over. I hit the I key. I hit the O key. I hit K. I hit F9. We insert that. So that's a great workflow tip. All right, I'm going to move on to the next clip now. And again, we're going to do the same thing. This time, I want to talk about another option here. So I'm going to hit I, O, and stop my playback. Now again, I want to pull or create multiple segments from this one clip. But instead of me setting my in and outs repeatedly and inserting off the same clip, I want to create sub-clips. I can use them in other sequences or organize my edits a little better. So with my in and out set for this clip right here, 00115, I could go to clip. I could choose create subclip. Let me discard that. I'll hold command and hit the U key. I create a subclip. Now looking in my media library, you can see Smoke created a new clip, gave it the same name, 00115, then it goes underscore subclip underscore 001. Now with the new subclip selected, I can use F9 or F10, doesn't matter in this case, and it's going to be added. And of course, if I select this and I zoom in, just for reference, you still have your extra heads and tails. It's just you created a subclip based on your in and out. And if I wanted to, I can select the original clip, I can scrub forward, and I can say, okay, let's create an in here. I hit I hit L, let it play back. I like to pull back of the camera. I hit O, I hit K to stop. I then hit Command U again, and I create another subclip of that same file. So then we can hit F9 to edit that into my rough cut. Also, I need to point this out because this is really a powerful part of this. You can create subclips based on your edit, based on my sequence. Especially when you want to render just certain frames of your sequence. You can create subclips of your sequences and render out different parts of it. Or you can use a subclip created from one sequence into another sequence. To do that, let me just give you an idea. If I come here to this frame, I hit I, I'll come over here and I'll hit O. I set my in and outs, right? Now if I come up to my clip menu and choose create subclip, or I use the hotkey, Control U, and we got to scroll down here because it's going to be placed in there. There you go. I've got now a subclip of that edit. Oh, here's a good point. The audio was locked. So when you create a subclip, it's going to respect if your audio or your video layers are locked. But you'll notice that it gave me two layers because I had two layers over here in my in and outs, but it turned off. I mean, it didn't include the audio because the audio was locked. Just for reference to prove it, let me hold Command Option A, my personal hotkey I created. And then let's hit Command U once again. You'll see another subclip is created based on the same in and outs. But if I go to the source tab with this new one selected, you can see there is the actual audio. So creating subclips is obviously a really powerful part, a very efficient way of creating different segments off of the same footage source if you wanted to. But what's also really powerful is obviously creating subclips based off of different sequences. All right, I don't really need these, so I'm just going to drag these to the bottom and delete them. And I'll hold Option X, clear out my in and outs for right now. Okay, now I would just continue my edits. Let's say, take a clip like this. Let's hit the L key, play this back. Okay, again for time, I'm just going to scrub forward here. So actually what I like is that camera move right there. So let's go here. I'm going to hit the I, set my in. I'll hit L, play back. I'll hit the O and hit the K. Okay, now another playback option that I like is I've set my in and outs and I really want to look at it before I even bring it into my creative edit or my rough cut, right? So we've got the option to play it back as we talked about already. We've got all the hotkeys, JKL, spacebar, blah, blah, blah. If I click this button as I showed you earlier, we get these other options. First of all, maybe I want everything to loop as I play it back. So I'll switch this to loop. Okay, and now I want to play back just my in and out. Let me scrub back to here, and if I choose play now, it's going to play it back, but of course it's going to loop the entire source, and that's not what I want. What I want to do is just loop my in and out. And here's where I'll click on the play button, but I'll hold it down to access the flyout, and you'll see we've got the play back in and out. And the hotkey is Shift \. So let me discard that, and I'll hold the Shift key and hit the \/ key. You'll see that my cursor jumped. Well, actually, I don't know if you notice this or not. This is just a preference, and it's okay. We can change it. It's playing back the in and outs, but it's giving it a 10-frame pre and post roll to it, which isn't really that bad. But if I really wanted to just see the in and outs that I just set, what I could do is go into my preferences and change that. So to get your preferences, go to your Autodesk Smoke, come down, you'll see preferences. Command comma is actually the hotkey that you can use to get to your preferences. But if you go to the preferences, on the general tab, right here, you're going to see player, and here you see pre-roll, post-roll. If I set this to be 0 by clicking on it, or I can just scrub the slider to 0, and now I close this. Let's go back over here. I'll hold the Shift key and hit the \/ key. And now you'll notice it's only playing back the frames that are within my in and out. And it's looping through it because of the options that I set up. And watching this, I really like this angle. I like that cut. So let's come back to my sequence here. I'll navigate to the last frame. I'll hit F9. I've now inserted that. Oh, I forgot I unlocked my audio. Let me undo that. Let me lock my audio once again with my hotkey that I created. And then I hit F9 once again. So great. Now I've got my rough cut, and I want to dynamically edit and trim this. Let's first zoom back to see the whole sequence. You can do that by just clicking this little button, which is the home button all the way down here in the right-hand corner. I click that, and we'll zoom back to see the full extent of our timeline. Let me also unlock my audio before I go any further. And again, this is all just a workflow, how you want to work. I am done with my rough cut at this point, okay? So I don't need to see my source view. I just want one player to focus on my sequence. So I could, of course, tap to the side over here on the right and choose player, or I could have used the hotkey of Alt-1. So now we just have one player, and I can obviously close my folders. We can also hide our media library if we need to. Down here in the lower left corner, we can hold this out. You can see all the different options we have for this. The one that I want to choose is hidden, and the hotkey is the 1 and the left arrow key. So I hold 1, I hit left arrow key, I hide it. I continue holding 1 and hit left arrow key. It's going to bring it back. But I'm going to hide it for right now because I don't need to see it. I want to focus on my creative editing now. Now, a critical part of working in your sequence and being efficient is being able to zoom in and out on your clips, your selections, and zoom out and pan around. So let's take a quick look at some of the hotkeys for doing exactly that. I've already showed you down on our horizontal scroll bar, we can click and drag, which is going to zoom us in and out. I love this. I do this all the time. You can also do that over on our vertical scroll bar. So if I do the same thing, I drag on a horizontal level, we can zoom in and out on that way too. But then, as I showed you before, we've got this little button down here, which is called the home key. And just so you know, the hotkey for that is Shift-Z. That's going to zoom out so you can see the entire sequence length. But you got the little arrow right there. If you click on that, you're going to get the flyout, and you're going to see you have some other options, such as resize height, fit to width, fit selection. We'll talk about selections in depth in a second, but perfect example, I hold the Shift key and I select a couple clips here, a couple segments. I come over and I choose that option, or we hold Option Shift-Z and you'll zoom into those selected clips. Now, another thing to understand, the home hotkey of Shift-Z and Option Shift-Z are toggles between two different zoom levels, meaning right now, I am looking at the zoomed in factor because I did zoom into selected. If I hold Shift Option Z again, I'm going to zoom out to the last zoom level I was at prior to going into that selection. For example, let me zoom in a little bit, okay? Now if I hold Shift Option Z, I zoom into the selection, Shift Option Z, I zoom back to that last zoom level I had. And the same is true for our Shift Z. So if I hit Shift Z, I zoom out to see everything. I hit Shift Z, I zoom back to that prior zoom level. You can always use your Command, minus, and plus to zoom in. So hold Command, plus, zoom in. And I like the fact that you just hold it, you'll continuously zoom in. Same with minus. I can repeatedly click on the minus while holding the command, or just hold Command and minus, and it's going to zoom back as far as it possibly can. You can zoom way back to a certain point where that's pretty much useless. Shift Z, zoom back to the full extent. Manually zooming in, just like your viewer, your players, and so on. Option Command, I get my magnifying glass, my zoom, and I can click and zoom in. And the interesting part of this is not going to zoom in and out based on where your positioner is, which is what happens when you use your horizontal scroll bar. If I click and drag vertically up and down, you'll notice that I'm zooming in to the location of my positioner. If I hold Option Command and I click, I'm going to zoom in and out based on where I'm clicking. You want to pan. Let's say we're zoomed in really tight. Of course, we can use the scroll bar. That's what you're probably going to do 90% of the time. But just for reference, just like in your player, it's Control Command and you can pan around, okay? Now, I'm going to say you're going to use this 90% of the time, if you will. Shift Z, zoom back, and let's deselect everything. Okay, there's a good point. Let's talk about deselecting and selecting your different clips. Of course, we can just click on a clip and it's selected. Pretty straightforward. I can hold Command and I can click and select multiple segments that are not right next to each other, or you use Shift key as I just did a second ago and you select multiple clips that are in sequence order. If you want to select all, it's Command A. Everything will be selected, including the gap, as you'll notice. You want to deselect everything. You have a couple different ways. If you click in an empty area above your layers or below the audio layer, you're going to deselect everything. But let me go and select a couple clips here. The hotkey to deselect all is Command Shift A. That will deselect everything. So once again, Command A selects everything. Command Shift A deselects everything. And of course, if I want to select with a marquee, a region area, I can start by clicking in an empty area and draw a marquee like this. And when I release it, any clip that falls within inside the marquee will then be selected. Notice the entire audio clip was selected because, again, it's not like I'm selecting just a section. I'm selecting any clips that fall within that marquee. If you want to select just a specific section or frames and so on, let me hold Command Shift A to deselect everything. Then I can hold the Command key. Then however long or the distance I drag the positioner is going to create a selection. Notice that this selection method will select individual frames and not the entire segment. All right, so those are your hotkeys and different methods of selecting elements inside of your timeline. Shift Z, Command Shift A, okay. Let's talk about our snap and our ripple. I know everyone knows what a ripple edit is, everyone knows what snap does, but I want to tell you about the hotkeys you can use to enable them and disable them as you're manipulating, as you're doing stuff, and you're working on your edits. Whenever you see the blue highlight, that obviously means it is enabled. You want to enable or disable to turn off with a hotkey. I hit the R key. That's going to turn on and off my ripple. If I want to enable and disable snap, it's the N key. So I hit N, and that turns snap on and off. Let me zoom back in just a little bit. So snap is on. I'm going to turn off ripple for right now by hitting the R key. I just want it off while I'm demonstrating the snap. So if I pick this clip up and I start moving it around, you're going to notice that the head frame of the clip is going to snap to the positioner. It's going to snap to an in point or an out point or a cut transition of any of the clips. All right? So that's what the snap is going to do by default. Makes sense. Let me undo that. If I hit the N key and snap is off, obviously I pick this up, I move it around. It's not going to snap to anything. So what if I start to move this and I realize, oops, snap is off, I want it on? What I can do is hold the Shift key, and you'll notice if you look over at snap over there on the right-hand side, it's now enabled. I let go of the Shift key, it turns off. I hold the shift key, it enables it again. So now, even though I started to drag and move this around with snap off, snap is now enabled temporarily because I have the shift key held. Release that. Let me undo that. Deselect all. One more modifier key that's important to understand is, let me make sure I have snap on, which it is. If I pick up my clip and I start moving it around, of course it's going to be snapping. As I said, notice that it's the head of my clip that I'm manipulating and moving that is snapping. If I need the tail frame to snap, I can hold the control key, and now I'm going to snap my clip that I'm manipulating by its tail frame. So that's holding the control key while manipulating your clips with snap on is going to then switch the snapping to be the tail. Just for reference, if snap is off, I hit the N key. I pick up my clip, it's not snapping. I hold shift, it's now snapping. I hold control, it's now snapping to the back. So you can enable both of them at one time if snap was not on by holding shift and control. I'm enabling snap and I'm telling it to snap by the tail. Let me undo that. There's a couple options I want to talk about as far as snapping. If we go to our option tab or flyout right here, I click on this, you'll see there's a sub flyout for snap. And you've got two options in here, snap to positioner and snap includes marks. Let me turn on snap include marks. And let's create some markers. So I'm just going to go to this frame, hit the M key, I make a marker, I go over here, M key, make another marker. So I've got two markers that I've created, okay? Now if we pick up this clip, hit N, turn on snap again. I move around, you'll notice that of course it's snapping as we expected, but it's totally ignoring your markers. So that's the point of that is you can turn this on and say, yes, use the markers as a snap object. So now if I pick this up, you'll notice that the head is snapping to it. And of course, hold the control, I can get the tail to snap to it. So that's that option. Let me select these markers and just delete them by hitting the delete key to clean this up. Now if I go back to the snap options and I turn on snap to positioner, this is going to be relevant when you are doing your drag and drops from your media library or manipulating a clip inside the timeline here. So what if I go to this frame right here and I know that for a fact I want this clip right here to start at that frame. I turn that option on and as soon as I pick it up, look what happens. It jumps to that positioner. I cannot even have it go anywhere else. With that option on, you are always going to take the clip and snap it to your positioner. Hold the control key and I can snap the tail to that positioner. So that's what this option is. Undo that. Let me turn that off. I do not want that on right now. It does come in very handy, but not at this moment. Okay, moving on to ripple. I know we all know what ripple does, but the hotkeys are the R key, turn ripple on and off. So that's going to toggle ripple on and off by hitting the R key. And what does ripple do? Obviously, when you make an adjustment, you're going to ripple the frames afterwards to move forward. So I lift it up, it obviously ripples up. I drop this down, it ripples everything back. That's pretty straightforward stuff. We know that. And there's also a hotkey, just like the snap, to enable and disable ripple while you are in the manipulation or moving your clips around. But you got to be careful with this because it's not really an on and off action. It is an on-off action once you start to edit or manipulate the segment. So for example, ripple's on right now. If I pick this up, you'll notice that it shifted over automatically. The ripple took place. But if I hold the Alt key, now I've turned off ripple. And if I drop this down, I'm going to do an override. As you see, that's what I just did. Let me undo that. And let's turn ripple off. Hit the R key. So now if I lift this up, I create the gap because I'm in override mode. But if I hold Alt, I turn ripple back on, and now I'm basically in insert mode. And if I drop this right here, everything's going to ripple afterwards, but that gap is still there. Understand when you hold the Option or the Alt key, it's actually going to change the effect of ripple once you start to manipulate the object, not the initial action that's going to take place in the timeline. So think about using this hotkey, the Alt key, to turn ripple on and off when you're manipulating your clips, as I just did the timeline, where I'm moving it around and suddenly I want it to be in ripple mode or I want it to not be in ripple mode. When you're doing your edits, when you're doing your roll edits, it's very handy then. You can enable and disable ripple depending upon if it's on or off while you're doing your edits. And then also when you're doing your drag and drops from your media library, it's going to again turn ripple on and off depending upon the position that it's in, when you're dragging the clips into your timeline, you can use the Alt key to enable and disable it. But when you're manipulating, let me undo that. When you're manipulating in the timeline, understand that holding the Option key or the Alt key, whichever one you call it, does change the ripple effect, but only after you lift and start making the adjustment. Okay, next we want to look at is our editorial tools that we have here and how we're going to create our dynamic edits with different hotkeys. So we have the select tool active by default. If you click on the flyout, you can see we have a slip tool, a slide cuts, and a slide keyframe. We're going to look at all of these. Of course, all of them can be accessed. I can turn my cursor into these tools by using a hotkey. Slip is S, D for slide, Shift D for slide cuts, Shift S for slide keyframes. But more importantly, and we're going to look at this, is you can activate these tools on a temporary basis so that you're not always switching the actual tool, but just accessing it when you need it. And to really understand that, let's first focus on the select tool. Obviously, we know the select tool selects things, okay? But notice what happens whenever you bring your cursor over different sections of your segments. Let's go to the very first frame. Let's come over here like this. And this is where I'll start doing some editing. As I said, we bring our cursor to a head or a tail. We're going to see that we turn into our roll edit tool. I go over and edit cut. Now we can start to edit the actual cut. And keep in mind, my cursor is red right now because ripple is off. And of course, as we all know, everything I'm about to show you, well, most of the tools that I'm about to show you, will have a different effect depending upon if ripple is on and off. For example, I come over to this clip right here, I bring it to the head, and I click and I drag, I create a roll edit, we're creating a gap. Pretty straightforward. Turn on ripple, I hit the R key, I go and do the same exact thing. Obviously, we are still rolling the edit, but everything after this clip is shifting and rippling down. I know you know this, I'm just covering all the grounds right now, okay? So let's say we're going to start doing our creative edits. What are we going to do? We want to trim our heads, our tails, move our cuts, change what frames we're using, and so on. So a typical workflow, I hit the L key to start playing this back. Okay, that clip's on there way too long already. I can tell you I don't like that. I don't like the way that starts. Okay, so yeah, I've given a pretty broad in and out when I did my rough cut. So what I would do is come over here. Let's hit the L key to a frame where I think about right there. Actually, I'll hit the K key. I don't want to create a cut, so Control V once again creates the cut. I can select this clip. Ripple is on, so I can delete this. I can just drag it to the bottom, delete it, or I can hit the delete key, and obviously everything's going to shift over. Sidebar, side note, sorry, let me go back to deleting. I'm going to undo this one more time. Now, what I did there, obviously, was I selected this clip, and I dragged it to the bottom of the UI, okay, to delete it. Now, we have two delete keys on the full-size keyboard for your Mac. If you're working on a laptop or an iMac, you're not going to have the full size unless you've added it. But on the full size keyboard, the two delete keys do different things depending upon if ripple is on or off. One is an extraction and one is a lift. The difference is, even if you have ripple off, the extraction will shift everything as if ripple was on. So to demonstrate this, let's turn ripple off. Again, I want to reiterate. If you have ripple on, they both do exactly the same thing. It's only when ripple is off you will see a different effect, okay? So we turn ripple off by clicking on it. Now, the delete key that is above your / key, if I hit delete right now, you'll notice what happens. I deleted that, but the gap remained because ripple was off. Let me undo that. That's called a lift, by the way. I'll select this clip again, and ripple is off, right? I'll hit the delete key that is above the arrow keys, just to the left of my end key, and look what happened. Everything shifted over as if ripple was on, but it wasn't. So that's the difference of the two delete keys. The delete key that's part of your letter keys is a lift. It's going to lift it, get rid of it, delete it, and if ripple is off, you're going to have the gap. If I have ripple off and I use the delete key above my arrow keys, it's called an extraction, and it's going to delete the clip, but everything's going to shift over no matter what. This is actually what I wanted to happen, so let me just turn back on ripple. I'll work with ripple on for right now. And if I scrub back here and I hit my play again, okay, that's even a little bit too long, but okay, I don't like the way that this started. So let's say that at this frame, this is actually where I want the first frame to be. There's several things I can do. I can create another cut, I can delete it, or I can do a roll edit by bringing my cursor right to the edge of it. but I purposely turned ripple on just to show you this. Now, if I do a roll edit with the ripple activated, this isn't really what I wanted to have happen. So let me undo that. So I want to disable ripple, but I don't want to go and turn it off permanently. I just want to temporarily turn it off. So I hold the Alt key and then I click and I do a roll edit, but I'm now not in ripple mode, so I can then create the cut as I want it to be. And then when I release the cursor, I still have ripple on and I have that gap right there. That's okay, because remember what I said, those gaps are actually objects, if you will. Think of it as an empty area with nothing, but it is something you can actually edit, add color corrections, add effects, and delete. So if I select this gap area, you'll see it reads that I have a gap selected. Ripple is on. I hit the delete key. Everything now shifts over because I deleted the gap. Now I can use my up arrow key to go back to the first frame and hit the L key again. Hit K. I want it to stop here. Now let's say I want to take the tail of this clip and move it to where my positioner is. So the hotkey for that is Shift E up arrow. So I hold Shift E and up arrow. It will trim the tail to the positioner. So once again, Shift E up arrow trims your tail to your positioner. Now if I want to trim my head of a clip to my positioner, let's say this clip right here, I really want the head of this to be here. I'll hold the E and hit the down arrow. I can select this gap right here, just hit the delete key, and everything's going to shift over for me. So to reiterate, to shift your head to the positioner, hold the E key and hit the down arrow key. So that's two very important hotkeys to move the head or the tail to the positioner. Now I want to point something out here. Remember, we're using hotkeys. We're not using our mouse. We're not using our tablet. I'm not clicking and selecting a clip to designate that the hotkey should affect that clip. So what is telling Smoke that this is the clip I want the hotkey to affect? Again, it is this yellow focus point. This is critical. When you are doing dynamic editing, this yellow focus point is going to tell Smoke which clip I want it to affect. And notice, as I play back or scrub through, as this little yellow focus point goes to another clip, also that clip is then highlighted. This is how Smoke knows which clip the hotkey should affect. So always be aware as to where that focus point is. Right now I've just got a one layer edit, so it's pretty straightforward. But if you had a multiple layer edit, when you're doing your hotkeys, when you're editing, that focus point is going to determine which clip is being affected. Except for when you select a clip. If you manually select a clip and it is highlighted and the focus point is on a different clip, the hotkey will affect the selected clip. So let's look at that while we discuss trimming your head and tails to in and out points. We know what ripple does. It shifts everything over to compensate for any kind of extraction that you make inside your timeline. But it also affects the dynamic trimming that we're doing. For example, let's say I want to bring my head here, this clip, to an endpoint on my timeline. So this is where I want the head to be. I'll hit the I key to set my endpoint, okay? I'm going to scrub away from this so you can see there's my endpoint. So now the focus point in my timeline is actually on clip 00090. You can see that it's highlighted by the white outline. But I want my edit to affect 00084. So I select 00084 and it is now going to be affected by my dynamic trimming that I'm about to do because it is selected. Now let me turn off ripple so we can see the difference of having ripple on and off. Now the hotkey to trim the head of the selected clip to the end point, the end mark, I hold the E key and I hit the I key. And as you would expect, the trim just took place. All the frames prior to the end mark are now gone because I just trimmed the head point for the selected clip to be at the same position as my end mark. Let me undo that. Let me turn on ripple. I'll hit the R key. Now I do the same thing. EI, you get a totally different result. It's going to compensate and ripple everything. It still created the amount of frames. It still edited the amount of frames that it did a second ago with ripple off, but instead of leaving the gap, it shifted everything over based on the amount of frames from the original position, the original frame that it was at for the head, to endpoint. So this is my whole thing I'm trying to stress. Ripple will change what is going to happen depending upon what dynamic trim or hotkey you are using. Let me clear out my endpoint. Let me hold the Alt and hit the I key. Now what if I want to trim the head to an out point? I hit the O key to set my out point. So you see there it is, okay? And then I'll select this clip once again. Ripple is on. I'll hold E and hit the O key. The same thing happened. It calculated the amount of frames from the original head to where the out point was and threw those frames away, created the dynamic edit, and shifted everything because Ripple was on. Undo that. Turn Ripple off. Again, hold the E key, hit the O key. What happens? We create the edit. The head moved to the actual out point because Ripple was off. So that's how you can trim your head to the in and the out point, and also the different results whether Ripple is on or off. Let me undo that. And then of course we have the ability to trim our tail to your in or your out. So I'm going to set an in point right there. Let's select this clip right here. Ripple is off right now, but I want to, let me move my cursor out of the way. I want to trim the tail of this clip 0090 to this in point. This time I hold Shift E and hit I, and you see we've trimmed our tail to the in point. Undo, turn on Ripple, Shift E, I, big difference, right? Okay, let's say we want to trim the tail for this clip 0084 to the out point. Shift E, O, it's going to trim it with Ripple on. Of course, I'm not going to go through it again because you know what's going to happen. If Ripple is off, there's going to be a gap left there, okay? So reiterating, we just learned how we can trim our head and our tail of clips to our in and our out points. I'll hold Option X to clear my in and out. Now I want to show you how you can enter specific amounts or frames that you want your edits to be, whether it's your in, your out, or the actual cut. So we want to go and change the head for this, but I want to shift it. I want to move it 15 frames. So instead of me coming in here and trying to make sure I get to where I want my 15 frame edit to be, if I hold Control and Option and click right on that number amount, the 141, a calculator is going to open up over here. And now I can enter -15 and click the Enter button. And I just did a ripple edit on that by 15 frames. And obviously, if I come back again, Control Option, click on this, I enter 15 and hit Enter, we're going to create it and bring it back to the 141 where it was. Same thing goes obviously for your tail. Option, Control, click, I'll enter 28 as a number and click Enter. You'll see now that we just trimmed this by 28 frames. Okay, now what about the actual cut? See, I can select this cut and I can start to manipulate it. As soon as you see your select tool icon change when you select the cut. But I've got this cut selected. You can see it's selected because it's highlighted. Now, same thing, Control Option, click right on it. You're going to get the calculator again. Enter a value. I'm going to enter 15 again and choose Enter, and I move the cut 15 frames forward. Same thing going backwards, obviously. Click on it, -15, Enter. You'll see that it now shifts back to its original position. One more thing I want to mention about this calculator. So let's bring it back up. I'll hold Option and Control again and click on it to get the calculator. Notice that we had the add and subtract buttons up here. I showed you how I entered a value and clicked Enter, whether it was -15 or 15. But let's do this. What if I enter 15 and I hit subtract? Notice what happens. It subtracts the 15 frames and I can repeatedly do it until I am satisfied with the actual adjustment to my edit. I can choose the add button. And again, what's happening? We are continuously doing it over and over again. When you hit the Enter button, it's going to be a one-time action. If you use the add and subtract buttons on those top there in that calculator, you can repeatedly adjust the edit. Now, I want to show you one more option as you are manipulating or editing. What if I want my positioner to always snap to my edit as I'm making it, as I'm doing my edit, so I can see the end result inside the player? We can go to our options over here once again and turn on Focus on Trim. Now, whenever I start to do a trim, you're going to notice that the cursor, the positioner, jumps and shows me the tail frame of this clip as I am manipulating. I can see what frame I am actually trimming it to. Same goes for the other side. I switch over, obviously, because I'm now trimming the head of this clip. The positioner now shows me the head frame. And let's say we put a dissolve in here. Let's say we put a default dissolve. So I'm going to hold Command and hit the T key, which puts my default dissolve in there. And now, if I want to manipulate that, one thing I have to do is I have to move the positioner first so I can access this. Now as I start to manipulate and edit the cut, we can see both the in and out clip happening as we start to manipulate this, because we have this option on, focus on trim. One quick note about the default dissolve. It comes in at 10 frames, progressive. You can change this if you want inside of your preferences. Obviously, we can edit it after we create it, but if you want to change that, this is kind of going off at a tangent, but I just want to show it to you. If we go over to our options, again, our preferences, I could have used Command Comma, and I probably should have, since we're focusing on hotkeys. But if I go to my timeline tab, transition, see the default is set to 10. You can control whether it's up to cut, from cut, center, change the interpolation from linear. And you can also change the default wipe if you want, but that's going far. That's another video maybe. But I just wanted to show you that you can control your transitions in here by setting that up. Then we got to get into the slip and the slide tools. Before I get into that, let me show you that there are some hotkeys to slip your cut to your positioner. And there's also a hotkey to slide to the positioner. And then we're going to dig into these other options, slip and slide cuts and so on. Let me move my positioner over there and let me select this cut right here. And let's say I want to slip my cut to the positioner, right? If I hold Shift D and hit the up arrow key, I slip that cut to the positioner. So once again, Shift D, up arrow key, slips your cut to the positioner. Let's talk about sliding to the positioner. So if I move this over to here, I've got my cut selected. I want to slide it over to the positioner. It's D, up arrow key, and now we slide the cut. And of course, again, if ripple is on or off, is going to affect all the media after the cut, but it doesn't change the actual action when you perform a slip cut to positioner or a slide cut to positioner. But the big difference of slide cut to positioner and slip cut to positioner are the frames being changed that are being used for the head frames and the tail frames of the two clips where the cut is taking place. One more time, slip cut to positioner, Shift D up arrow. Slide cut to positioner, D up arrow. With that said, that's a great transition to start talking about our slip and our slide tools. I'll zoom in once again to here, and let's find our clip. Okay, let's work it. I'll work on these two right here. One thing I want to do is change a preference. Right now, if you'll notice, when you select or your cursor is over a clip, you are seeing the frames for the tail and the head, but only for the selected clip and only for the clip that is highlighted. So let's go to our preferences, Command Comma, brings up our preferences. And right here on the timeline tab, you have this segment display. By default, as I said, show handles on selected. I'm going to expand that and choose show all handles. This way, when I close this, now every clip is displaying the handles for the heads and the tail. In fact, let's go and do a little roll edit here to add a couple frames to this for demonstration. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about, and I did mention this in the very beginning when we started talking about these tools. Obviously, there are hotkeys to access each tool. And what that means is when I hit the S key, I actually turn on the slip tool. Now, even with slip on or any other tool, bring your cursor to the head or the tail of a clip and you can still do your roll edits. Doesn't matter, that's always available to you. But when you have slip activated, I don't get the option to select, well, I can select the cut point, but I can't do anything with it except for use my hotkeys to manipulate it. The point is, with the slip tool activated, my cursor is functioning differently. It's now the slip tool. Of course, that makes sense. And what do? You bring your cursor into this clip. Notice the frames that we are at for head, 1678, and my tail, 1607. I can now click in this clip and I can slip the frames that we're using within the edit of the segment itself. Pretty straightforward, I know. Now, let me hit the A key, which is going to bring me back to my select tool. And now let's say I'm editing and I want to access the slip tool, but I don't want to switch my cursor to the slip tool. I only want it for a split second or just while you make a quick slip. So this is where instead of hitting the S key to activate the slip tool, I can hold down the S key and now I can temporarily access the slip tool, make my manipulation, then release the S key and I'm back to my select tool. That's true for all the tools available to you inside of this flyout. More importantly, When I hold down the S key, I now can go and use my left and right arrow keys to dynamically slip this clip. So you see that? I'm holding the S key and I'm using my left and right arrow keys. So let's go to the flyout. We have our slide. And notice that my slide tools currently are yellow. Why is that? Can anyone answer that? Good answer in the back there. It's because ripple is on. We turn off ripple, we go back, we now have a different tool. Well, it's still the slide tool, but we're now in overwrite mode, if you will, because ripple is off. So you will get a different result, of course. If I take my slide tool and I drag this and I start to manipulate this going each direction, notice that we're seeing what frames are being eliminated or altered on the incoming and outcoming clip, and we are sliding our clip. We are not changing the current frames that are being used in the segment that I am sliding. I am changing the frames that are being used on the incoming and outgoing clip. But all the media after this clip later in the timeline is not being affected in any way whatsoever. Let's hit the R key, turn on ripple. Let's do the same thing. I start to slide this. What's happening? All the media after this is going to ripple according to my adjustment. The tail frames of the clip to the left of this segment is going to be altered and changed depending upon how far I drag this clip to the left. And after I slide to the left, if I slide back to the right, there will be a gap because I altered the tail frames of this segment to the left. And the same rules apply as far as accessing the tool, the slide tool, on a temporary basis. Hit the A key again, go back to my select tool. I come over here, I hold the D key down, and now I can go and I can temporarily access this. And again, I'm creating a gap in there because the fact that ripple was on. Let me turn that off, turn ripple off, hold the D key, click and drag, and again, you see the same result we had before. And remember, performing this slide is actually going to take advantage of snap if it's on. You can see that I'm snapping to the positioner there. So that's another good point to keep in mind. If you have markers in here and you've enabled the option to snap to markers, this slide action will take advantage of your snap option if it's on. And the other thing, once again, I hold the D key, but I'm using my left and right arrow keys to go and dynamically slide this clip to where I want it to be. All right, let me activate the next tool, which is the Slide Cuts tool. And you can use the shortcut hotkey of Shift D to access the Slide Cuts tool. Now this one's a little tricky to understand at first, but think of it this way. This is the best way it was explained to me. Thank you, Grant, by the way. It is a slip and a slide at the same time. If I bring my cursor in here, it's important, let me move this out of the way so we can see what the frames are for my head and my tail for the incoming, outcoming clip, and also the clip that I'm about to drag on. But I'm going to just click and start to drag, and you see what's happening? I'm altering both the in and out of my current clip. I'm also altering the frames for the two adjacent clips. So I'm slipping and sliding my clip at the same time. Let's enable ripple by hitting R. You'll see it, cursor turns yellow. Do the same thing. So now what's happening? I'm not altering the frames after this clip, but I will alter the frames prior to it if I can drag it into that. But of course, when I drag back the other direction, we create a gap because of ripple is on. Okay, undo that. As we talked about before, I will go to the Select tool or hit the A key. I'll hold Shift D and I'll use my left and right arrow keys to do exactly what we were doing before. I'm not only moving the clip in my timeline, I'm also changing and altering, sliding the frames that are being used. All right, last tool is the Slide keyframe. It is Shift S to access that tool. So we need some keyframes. Did I delete those keyframes from before? Let me hit the Home button. Oh, I thought we still had, I must have deleted those keyframes. So let's just go back over here. Let's use whatever. Doesn't really matter what clip. I'll go with this one here. So let's select this clip. Let me go back, hit A, get my select tool. I'll go to my effects ribbon. We'll add another axis effect really quick. Create a keyframe, turn on auto key, make an adjustment. That makes absolutely no sense, but who cares? I'll move forward a couple frames. We'll go and we'll scale this back down a little bit, move forward a couple frames, and then manipulate it like that. Okay, all I wanted was some keyframes. So we've got some keyframes on here. Now, if I want to slide these keyframes, Shift S, I access the Slide keyframe tool, and you can imagine what it's going to do. It's going to slide the keyframes. You can see the blue lines are sliding as I'm manipulating them. So this is really handy though when you need to alter and change the keyframes and you don't want to go into the editor and access the curve editor. You just want to slide them. Very easy, very fast way of doing it. All right, I'll hit the A key, go back to our select tool. Let's zoom back out. The last thing, hit zoom back out. Okay, the last thing I really want to touch on and talk about is gap effects. And we looked at it a little bit earlier, but I really want to stress this a little bit, that the gap effect, think of it as a clip. It's a virtual clip. There's nothing in it to start with, but you have total control of it as far as editing it, trimming it, using all of these different dynamic trimming tools we just looked at, and adding effects into that gap effect. So for example, let me move over there. Let's go zoom in on this. Let's select this clip here. So let's say we want to create a gap effect above this clip. So we have this empty layer up here. What I'll do is I'll use my page up key, which brings my focus point, my primary, up to that top layer, which there's nothing there but the gap. And I've got this clip selected down here. And I want to create a cut, if you will, within that gap based on my selected clip. If I hold Shift and hit the V key, you'll see what I just did. I just created a cut in the gap layer above it based on the selection of the clip below. Now let's say we want to add an effect to this. So if I go to my effects ribbon, I throw a color correction on here, and now we get our color correction added to the gap. Maybe we want to make some adjustments. Let's increase my saturation a little bit, really blow this out. Let's take the contrast up a little bit. And I can start to manipulate and do some color effects to this, maybe create an entirely different mood, a different grade as we go and adjust this. But what's happening is, keep in mind, that's happening to this gap right here. So if I scrub through it, it's obviously going to happen to the entire clip because I set my duration. But watch what happens. And I take this clip over here and I drag this. It's like a virtual clip. So I can pull this and edit this, and now it's going to affect multiple clips inside of my timeline. And you can continue to add more effects into this gap. And then you can add more gaps on top of it if needed. Also, let me hold my 1 and hit my left arrow key to bring back my media library. And if I take this and I pick it up, I can put it in my media library. Now I've got an effect in here that I can come in and rename this. CC effect. Then I'm over here and I'm working and I say, let's take this clip back into here. I drop my gap effect over some other clips. So I dropped it in the same clip there, but you get the idea. I can bring it over here. I can extend this duration. I can repurpose this. So very powerful workflow. I love, love, love gap effects. So I really hope you explore them and experiment what you can do with them. In the very beginning of this video, I talked about how I wanted to focus on the hotkeys and shortcuts that are available to you to make you the most efficient editor you can be inside of Smoke 2013. And I believe we have achieved that. Before I wrap this up, I'm going to again stress that obviously we can go to our shortcut hotkeys. Here's every single shortcut hotkey that you can use or you can add or learn from, okay? If you want to find one, type in the name and find it. Or you can go up here to your help menu and choose Smoke Help. Once again, our wiki help is going to open up, and on the front page, you've got the hotkey shortcuts right there. Click on the link, and here's all the different hotkeys that are available to you. Not just on the dynamic editing, that's what I focused on right here, the edited ones. That's really what this whole video was about. Access all of them. Lastly, I cannot end a video without talking about Grant K and the Smoke Learning Channel. Going back to Smoke, I go back over here to the help menu. I choose Smoke Learning Channel. We're going to go out. I'll pause this playback for a second. But here you have tons and tons of video that Grant has created. This is just such a great resource to help you get up to speed and understand Smoke. So I definitely recommend you checking out what Grant is doing here. He's constantly putting new videos up here. So once again, this is Ken LaRue from Autodesk. Please come back and visit my blog often, as I plan on continually adding tips, tricks, video tutorials, and just information about Smoke and what is happening. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this video.